Hello, this is how to install Windows 11 Pro with virt.io hard disk and network interface card in QEMU. On Google, I searched for Windows 11 ISO. This is the page from Microsoft. Says Windows 11 disk image ISO for AMD 64x64 Intel devices. Select download. Download now. I need to choose the language. I'm going to go with English United States. Confirm. And this is the download the ISO file. Selected the directory where to save. My operating system, host operating system is Kubuntu 2504. I'm going to use the graphical user interface application named virt-manager. Downloading the Windows 11 installer ISO has finished. Next up, we need a second ISO file, which is the Windows virt.io drivers. I searched on Google for Windows virt.io drivers. The actual result that we're after is this directory with releases from fedorapeople.org/groups/virt/virt.io-win. We don't want the source code, CPP files, or what is the source code for the actual virt.io drivers. We want an ISO file that we can mount at the same time with the Windows 11 ISO in a virtual machine that's run by QEMU. So let's see in here, we can sort by last modified. 2025, so this is the latest version from this month. And we could choose the largest file that doesn't have a version. So in this case, it's almost 700 megabyte in size, so a CD-ROM size, and without any version. So virt.io-win.iso. This file is probably sym-linked to this file, which does contain a version. I always download the file, so you can see that the two files have the same timestamp and the same size. I always download the file that has a version in a name, because from time to time new versions of virt.io-win ISO appear, and I will know which one to use. And if you're using older versions of Windows that are no longer supported by Microsoft, then you will need older versions of virt.io-win ISO drivers. For instance, for Windows 7 or maybe for Windows XP, you will need older versions of this ISO. We'll be back once the download has finished. We can create the virtual machine meantime. So this is virt-manager, the application, virtual machine manager. We can start creating the virtual machine, new virtual machine from the main menu. Local install media ISO, forward, browse. And we're going to select the Windows 11 24/2 English x64. So that means the second half of the year 2024. H224. It has selected the correct template for the virtual machine. For the virtual machine settings, Microsoft Windows 11. Forward. Let's assign a ton of resources because I have enough. So 14 vCPUs, 14 CPU threads, and 10 gigabytes of random access memory. Also, the disk image size you can assign as much as you want, because it's a QCOW2 image, which will increase as needed. when you start using the virtual machine, the size of the QEMU virtual machine hard disk will be really small, and it will increase up to and maximum 250 gigabytes. Then if you create virtual machine snapshots which are part of this file, the size of the snapshots will contribute to this maximum quota of 250 gigabytes per the QEMU file. But nowadays you can also create virt-manager snapshots that are not stored as part of the same file where the virtual hard disk is. Windows 11, customize before install. The network selection is the default one, which is correct, which is network address translation. That means that the virtual machine will be able to connect to the host machine and to the internet. And that's enough. Advanced networking, such as bridged networking, it's a different thing altogether. So finish. Different topic. The Windows 11 installer will have some hardware limitations that it will try to see if your computer has. It will prefer UEFI versus BIOS. It will prefer to have a hardware TPM, even if that's part of the CPU. So we will keep the defaults as specified by the Windows 11 template when we have created the virt-manager virtual machine. So let's look at these settings. Again, TPM is what the Windows installer will look for. UEFI, the newest motherboard. CPU topology, maybe it's better if we fix them like this. So just one CPU, but with 14 cores and no hyperthreading. The hard disk should not be SATA, but be the fastest possible, which is virt. So this ensures the best possible speed. If you want to not install the virt.io drivers, then you keep the defaults. Whatever was configured when you have created the virtual machine in virt-manager, which is SATA. SATA is supported by default out of the box by the Windows 11 Pro operating system. virt.io is not supported, so you will need, when you install Windows, in order for the Windows installer to be able to find the virtual hard disk, you will need to have available the virt.io Windows kernel modules available. The CD-ROM can remain SATA, which is the fastest from this list. Network interface card, Intel 1000 is well supported by most Windows versions, but we will switch to the faster one, which should be virt.io. And then that's about it. So the only changes that we actually did was change for network interface card the device model to the best one, which is virt.io. virt.io disk 1 disk bus to virt.io. And then this thing, which I'm not sure it's mandatory, which is I have set the CPU's details topology, manually set CPU topology to 1 socket and 14 cores without any hyperthreading. At this point, we cannot begin the installation because we will need the second ISO, the second DVD-ROM drive available in the machine before starting it. So we go add hardware, selects the correct category by default in here, which is storage. And then we want to select the ISO image. So we go CD-ROM device, manage. The virt.io ISO has finished downloading. And virt.io win 01271 ISO, choose volume. So we're adding storage of type CD-ROM, SATA, and with the ISO file specified as custom storage finish. Now we will need to look at the order of the disks. So the virtual machine has a virtual hard disk, a DVD-ROM drive 1, which is the Windows installer ISO, and the DVD-ROM drive 2, which is the virt.io Win ISO drivers. Let's look at the boot options. It's going to boot first time from SATA CD-ROM 1, which is the Windows 11 installer. And then when the installer reboots the first time, the computer will no longer boot from the CD-ROM drives, but straight from the hard disk. So we like what we see here. Let's begin installation. The QEMU file is being created, again very small at the start. It asks if we want to boot from the CD-ROM. We need to press enter. There's two different time periods installing Windows 11. There's the period where the USB tablet is not active. That's when you will see in the title bar that you need to press a key combination in order for the mouse that's inside the virtual machine to ungrab. But now, when we see the first window that's freely movable around, the USB drivers should be installed already, which means you can easily enter and exit with the mouse without pressing any key combination. You just move the mouse outside the virtual machine, and it no longer says in the title bar that you need to press that key combination. Okay, so this is the installer, has booted from the first CD-ROM drive. The Windows 11 ISO installer asks the first wizard question. Installer wizard, next. Next. I would like to install Windows 11. Nothing exists on the virtual hard disk, so yes, everything can be deleted. Product key, I don't have a product key, this button here. Let's select the better operating system, which is Windows 11 Pro. The difference between Windows 11 Home and Windows 11 Pro, Windows 11 Home comes oftentimes pre-installed with laptops with hardware, whereas Windows 11 Pro might come pre-installed with business-style hardware. Windows 11 Pro has some advantages over Windows 11 Home related to group policies, to remote desktops. That's why I always select Pro, and I have never installed Windows 11 Home my entire life. Okay, next, the N versions are for the European Union. I also don't select these. EULA. Okay, at this point, the installer tries to find the hard disks that are attached to the virtual machine. Can't find anything. And it's the moment where we want to install inside the running Windows installer. In the kernel mode, we want to install the virt.io drivers. So load driver button, browse, virt.io win e:. I have expanded. And we need to select AMD64. Nope, it finds the drivers automatically if you select the correct directory in here. So I have selected e:\AMD64\W11. Finds the correct file, which is e:\AMD64\W11\vo, which is virt.io, store storage.inf. INF is a ini file, a plain text file that tells the Windows kernel how to load the Windows kernel module. Install. Now, because the correct Windows kernel driver module has been loaded, it finds the virtual hard disk, unallocated space 250 gigabytes. So there's no partitioning table, nothing on the virtual hard disk. Next. Ready to install Windows 11 Pro and format the entire disk. A big hurdle that we will find is that it might not be easy to install Windows using only local Windows users. So without using Windows users which have email accounts on the Microsoft web servers. Okay, we need to select the language, country, region, United States, yes. US again. No second keyboard layout. I don't have a network interface card that's currently recognized by Windows because the network interface card is of type virt.io, and I did not yet install the virt.io drivers inside the Windows kernel that's currently running as part of the Windows installer. Says let's connect you to a network. I don't want to connect to any network. Let's see if we can exit. Okay, so I have tried in here to exit because it forces me to install the virt.io driver, which I do not want. I want first to finish installing Windows, and then once my user manages to log into Windows, I'm going to install the Windows kernel modules for the network interface card. So the button next is disabled. What could I do? I pressed Shift F10, the key combination, Shift keyboard key and the F10 keyboard key. Then I wrote OOB out of the box experience / and bypass on nro.cmd, and there's auto completion in here. So you can write just O and press whatever, OO, and press the tab key once, / py, press the tab key once, and completes correctly, bypass nro.cmd, go. This is a workaround that still works, but it's expected to stop working in the near future. So again, United States, then US, no second keyboard layout. And I can choose I don't have internet because I don't have internet. Who's going to use this device? Your name. So you can select the name for the local Windows user. some Windows users and Windows user groups already exist, so you should not choose those. So you cannot create a user named administrator, for instance. So I'm going to go with admin. At the security questions, I write things that don't make any sense, because otherwise people might recover my password if they know me. But since this is just a virtual machine, nobody actually has access to it. That's not that important. Okay, location, my device. It's a virtual machine, it's not a laptop, it's not roaming around, it's not using various, I don't know, random Wi-Fi gateways, okay? It's creating the Windows user account with its home directory, all sorts of configuration files taken from the skeleton for the users. The installer was pretty fast up to this point, maybe because of the installation being a virtual machine. Or maybe my computer is fast, who knows. Okay, and now it has created the local Windows user account. It has also logged me in for the first time into the Windows desktop. It wants to populate all sorts of suggestions in the start menu, but it can't because there's no network interface card. So let me do the settings that I do on most of my machines. Let's see what can be done here. How do we do it? Taskbar settings. Okay, no search box. You can just search by clicking on the start menu. It's the exact same search. No task view. I'm not using virtual or monitors or what this thing is. Widgets. Okay. Let's put the start menu at the left, as it was the case in Windows 95. It already looks okay. Let's hide some of the suggestions. There was a setting for suggestions in start menu. I don't find it any longer. Okay. Let's look at the I'm not going to need the Copilot. I need a web browser. You install your favorite. Start without my data. Don't bring over anything. Okay, we could use Firefox or Google Chrome. No network. Okay. Right click on the start menu. Let's go to Device Manager. If we look inside File Explorer, we can see that the 3 storage devices are here. We have C colon, which is the virtual hard disk, virt-io, and then we have 2 DVD drives. D colon is the Windows installer, and E colon is the virt.io drivers. So from here, from E colon, we're going to install the missing drivers. We want Ethernet, the inside device manager, the devices that don't yet have a correct driver are grouped in the group other devices, and the other devices group is expanded. The other ones are collapsed. So you can immediately see that you have 3 devices that might benefit from virt.io drivers from the second DVD-ROM drive. Right click on the first one, which is Ethernet controller. Select the first option there, update driver. Browse my computer for drivers. Browse. And E colon. That's it. And it has installed the correct drivers, which is for the network interface card, Red Hat virt.io Ethernet adapter. Close. And now we're down to 2 devices that don't yet have a driver. Right click on the second one, which is PCI device. Update driver, browse, E colon is already selected. Just press next. virt.io balloon driver, close. This is for random access memory. I'm not sure I have ever used it, but that's the way it is. Right click. On the next one, PCI Simple Communication Controller, update driver, browse, E colon backslash already selected, next. virt.io serial driver, close. I could probably survive without installing drivers for the last 2 devices, but for the network interface card I want to be able to use a web browser. Okay. Firefox. Download. Yes. Okay, why am I using Firefox browser? In order not to use Microsoft Edge. Most people will use Microsoft Edge just to install Google Chrome, but I'm installing Mozilla Firefox. Pin, set, import, save and continue. Yes. Skip. Don't sync anything. And this should be it. No need for Microsoft Edge any longer, so I can unpin Microsoft Edge from the taskbar. Mozilla Firefox is already pinned, so I can move it to the first position. I'm not using the Microsoft Store almost never. I don't know of any application that I actually install from the store. And I also don't use Microsoft File Explorer. I use Total Commander instead, which is, I do it like this. Total Commander Home. 32 64-bit latest version. Download page. 64-bit only. Really small, really small file. English. Other languages, no. The default install directory, correct. Next. Create for all users, not on the desktop. I don't want things on the desktop, anything. Okay. And now we should have Total Commander available. Let's start it for the first time. I'm going to configure it. I don't want this vertical bar here, so show button bar to vertical unchecked. I don't want the function buttons, I know them by heart. And what else? Operation, left mouse button, Windows standard apply. Quick search, letters only. And I always install a text editor, which I then configure under operation edit in here instead of Notepad. Notepad is not good enough for my needs. I'm a programmer, developer by trade. Okay. At this point, I also don't use this toolbar, so I could hide it. I can pin to the Windows taskbar Total Commander. I can unpin Windows Explorer, move Total Commander to the second slot, and close Windows Explorer. So I never use Windows Explorer except for the places where Total Commander does not work, like, I don't know, maybe some strange connection to an Android device, or very advanced hardware things. But for almost anything else, Total Commander is what I use. If I want to start a command line terminal, I write it in the command line part of Total Commander at the bottom. In here I write cmd. It will start cmd.exe. And even more, sometimes I want the file manager to be always elevated as administrator, which I do by starting Total Commander. I go right click inside the start menu on Total Commander, then run as administrator. Yes, 2. And that's it. All of the processes that I start from now on will automatically be elevated. If I want to view a file, let's see an example. I'm going to use F3, which is the built-in Total Commander viewer. If I want to edit a file, I'm going to install a text editor, and I'm going to configure Total Commander to use that editor. When I press F4, should not use Notepad, but something better. Okay, at this point, what else do we do? Right click on the start menu. What can we do here? Installed applications. Let's see if there's applications which we can uninstall. Copilot. All of these applications which are Metro style will be reinstalled once you upgrade Windows. I have never used Feedback Hub. I don't know what that thing is. Ping search. There's all sorts of Metro applications which are part of Windows. And when you say uninstall, it just disables the application for the current user, maybe not even for all of the users on this computer. And when you upgrade Windows, they will automatically be re-enabled and will appear again in installed applications. So there's a ton of work that you're doing for very little time, because Windows 11 updates come out every quarter, or maybe even more often. I don't use Teams. I don't use any of the built-in offerings from Microsoft. Power Automate. Okay, this should be it. What else do? I don't want what's happening in here, so I don't want a million of pinned applications. I don't want recommended stuff. How do we change things? Settings, start, settings. I want 0 recommendations, so I go with more pins. I don't want any help, so no recently, no recommended, no recommendations, no account related. Okay, let's see how the start menu looks now. All apps. All apps should appear by default, but I do not know how to make that happen. Okay, you can uninstall applications also from here, from the Windows Start menu. So you go Windows Start menu, all apps, find the application that you would want to disappear for a while, like Microsoft News, right-click on it and uninstall. Sticky notes. Weather. Some of these applications tell you that they cannot be uninstalled. Okay, and then the next settings that I always do in Windows, the cursor is too small, so that's mouse. Additional mouse settings, pointers, Windows default system scheme. It's a combo box and I'm selecting the default extra large. Okay. And what else? Right click on the Windows Start menu, System. Let's make sure that the computer name is correct, which should be the same name as the virtual machine, Win11 in this case. It will require that you restart. We can postpone a bit. And I'm going to enable remote desktop, which I don't know how to do. So I'm going to go to the System About and Advanced System Settings. And the last tab, so similar to what you did in Windows XP, there's Remote. Allow remote connections to this computer from the group box Remote Desktop. And the user admin already can connect remotely to this computer. Okay. We should not restart, but actually shut down. Let's look at the settings of the virtual machine. We don't need the virt-io drivers any longer. If we were to need them, we can always download the ISO, install 7-zip, and extract the ISO file as it were a zip file, or we can mount the ISO file. So there's absolutely no need for the second CD-ROM drive. So I'm just going to delete it. So click on SATA CD-ROM 2 and the remove button. Delete. For the first DVD-ROM drive, I don't need the Windows 11 installer ISO any longer, so I'm going to remove it, apply. And this is about for the settings. Now I want to create a snapshot. I'm using virt-manager. I'm allowed to use snapshots, so I'm going to use snapshots. After I finish installing and a bit of terraforming the virtual machine, I'm going to create a snapshot. And the snapshot will be inside the QCOW file. So snapshot 1 internal, which means inside the QCOW file, not somewhere else. And the first snapshot, in my case, it's always the same name, which is after_install. Finish. This way, if I install a wrong application and wrong drivers, if I delete something important, if I mess up the virtual machine, I can always go back to this place where the Windows 11 Pro operating system is installed correctly. The local Windows user has been created correctly. I can log into the Windows desktop. Mozilla Firefox is already installed. the remote desktop is already enabled, the virtual machine has the correct name. So I'm able to both work on the virtual machine and even more, I can connect remotely to the virtual machine. So let's start the virtual. I'm not going to use this graphical user interface after I find out the network interface card of the virtual machine. virt-manager acts as a DHCP server for the QEMU virtual machines, and it's going to assign the same IPv4 address to this virtual machine Win11 each time the machine starts. So I'm going to go to the Show Virtual Hardware Details tab, Network Interface Card, and I'm going to save somewhere this IPv4 address. Okay. At this point, I want to not use the virtualization software at all. Maybe just for starting and stopping the virtual machine, and maybe I want to set the virtual machine to always be running when the host operating system is running. So that's in the settings of the virtual machine Win11, boot options, and the auto start group box, start virtual machine on host boot up. virt-manager knows how to stop correctly the virtual machines when the host operating system is stopped. But then if you want, when the host operating system, in my case Kubuntu 2504, to starts also this virtual machine to start, this is the way to go. I didn't change anything. Okay, I know the IPv4 address. Let's try to connect using the remote desktop protocol. Let's see how that is done from Windows, from a Linux host and connecting towards a Windows virtual machine. This is my wiki page. The first link there, RDP, Remote Desktop Protocol. Says how to install the RDP server on Windows, Linux, Alpine Linux, various versions of the Linux operating system, and also on FreeBSD. And at the very end, if you press the End key, you have this command line. So I have installed the binary software package, in my case Ubuntu 2504, that contains xFreeRDP. Let's see how you decide that. So let's become super user. Apt install apt file. Okay. Apt file update. Apt file search. And we want to search for the deb package that contains this executable xFreeRDP. The name of the package is FreeRDP2-X11 because we actually want to search for the deb package that provides the executable /usr/bin/xFreeRDP, not with the 3. This is a newer version of FreeRDP that might work for you or might not, but the proven client is the one without a 3, so the version 2, this one. Apt install FreeRDP2-X11. Nothing to install, it's already installed on my computer. And now we need this command line. X3RDP, the user is not named administrator because the user administrator is already pre-built. It comes with the Windows 11 Pro installation. And when I have installed Windows 11, I needed to provide the name for a new Windows local user, and I provided admin. Resolution, width, and height 1080p, and the IPv4 address is 192, 168, 122, and 254. And then I want the best remote desktop protocol features possible, which is /video /rfx /gfx, and then I want sound to come from the virtual machine towards the host machine, and I want to be able to resize the X3RDP client window as I want. That will tell Windows, hey, please resize. And that's it. So I just took the command line from the chapter Linux and FreeBSD client X3RDP, and I have replaced the correct username, Windows username, and the correct IPv4 address for the virtual machine. And now, since we're connected the first time, it says that the virtual machine provides a crypto certificate pair, but it cannot prove that those certificates were actually created by the virtual machine, not some man in the middle attacker. But there's no such possibility. It's a virtual machine on this computer. I'm going to trust, uppercase Y, press enter. Asks for the password. It already knows the name of the local Windows user, admin. Let's place the password. And that's it. We could connect to the virtual machine without using the virtualization software. The virtualization software, we have used it just to figure out the IPv4 address. And we can use this board, this virtual machine manager initial window, to manipulate the machine in the sense of starting, stopping, and maybe saving the state of the virtual machine. All of the other operations we can do from inside the FreeRDP window. Let's see how resizing works. We have resized the X3RDP window to just a quarter of the screen. This told Windows, hey, please try to resize to this resolution, and Windows did that. Where is it? Display settings. So I have right-clicked on the desktop, and at a resolution, it refuses to say what's the current resolution. But it's something extremely non-standard. If I resize to half of the screen, again, it will tell Windows, hey, this is the resolution that I want. So it doesn't do any stretching. There's no black borders. Everything's as crisp as possible, as fast as possible. Start menu is really fast. Can uninstall applications. Me being a programmer, I can do anything with this amount of speed and quality from the remote desktop protocol connection. I can build software, I can run an integrated development environment such as Visual Studio. I can do all sorts of command line things and file manager things using Total Commander, for instance. Okay, so this is it. This was how to install Windows 11 Pro on QEMU. In my case, I'm using QEMU because the host computer is running a Linux operating system, Ubuntu 25.04. The default solution for virtualization in Ubuntu is the KVM Linux kernel module, QEMU, and virt-manager, this graphical user interface software, virtualization software, virtual machine manager. And because I want to install Windows 11 Pro with the best speed possible, I have installed virt.io drivers inside the QEMU virtual machine where Windows runs for both the storage and the network interface card. And then for additional speed points, I have allocated to the virtual machine a ton of resources, 14 vCPUs, which is CPU threads, 10 gigabytes of random access memory. And also for extra speed, I'm not using the virtualization software to connect to the graphical user interface. Instead, I'm using the native Windows solution, which is built into Windows Pro, which is the remote desktop protocol server. And I'm using a really optimized and good Linux RDP client, which is X-Free RDP, this application. Thank you.